And now, a native podcast with Matt and Zach.
And welcome back to another episode of A Native Podcast. I am Zach, and with me, as always, is Matt. And I got to start it off that way, as always, and say, Matt, buddy, how we doing today?
Yo, man, doing pretty good. Just getting back to the gym to burn off those Christmas calories. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you went home, so you got that home cooking.
Oh, for like 5, 6 days is the longest visit I've had there in a while.
Yeah,
So got I eat more calories when you go to your family, eat more food.
exactly. Oh, I agree. I'm in that in that December, January, that early time of the year kind of mode, where it's kind of this has always been a downtime for me every year, I feel like. I saw a post actually today that was kind of funny was India it was that that time between Christmas and New Year's, everyone's on Indian time.
Oh,
Just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Which I agree. I feel like, rolling around here, especially at Wolf Point, man, it's hopping. There's a lot of people out, or more normal, and then it just the like it is that. It's good. It's the holidays. It's always a good time. But glad to be back talking. Our last episode with Paul went well. That was exciting to get that done before the holidays, before we went home, saw our family. But I'm excited to get this one. And it's funny. I remember you kept texting me. You kept texting me. It's the Akwesasne, right? Uh,
they're
that's
they're
I'm pronouncing it correctly, right? Akwesasne
that's what they call themselves
as a whole.
as a whole group. Yes.
And that's what the Canadian side is also called. They're called the Akwesasne Mohawk,
Right.
and then they're the St. Regis Mohawk here in the US, but they're essentially all one. Cousins, brothers, sisters. That Tinder circle doesn't have borders in it. So they're swiping
Well, it's like the Montana Blackfeet and Blood Reserve, right? It's like
100%.
they're all the same people essentially.
I would argue if Mexico set up reservations and kept their indigenous, you would have had the the Tohoto O'odham in that sense over there.
Right.
Like yeah, there's native folks. Don't get me wrong, there's native folks in Mexico, but they didn't set up reservations. They didn't treat them the same way Canada and the US did, which is interesting when you look at that. And that's definitely another subject, but we'll get into that international topic today for sure, which I'm excited for because these borders are just they're lines on maps.
Right.
In reality, yeah, like people try and build walls and do this and that all across the globe, but they're just, oh, it's a river. Like their
Right.
island over there is Canada? What do you mean?
No, as is the case here, is the St. Lawrence River, which we'll get into when we pull up maps here, but it drains one of the Great Lakes. And so
Yes.
it's a big river. It's a big river.
Well, and part of it was, when you get back in your European Western history books, they talk about the Northwest Passage, this whole trade route to Asia thing. And, people knew, like, that's the thing is they knew we were here. They knew we were here. The Vikings had documentation
Oh,
of it. It just went hidden. They don't want to talk about it. They wanted to indoctrinate us with certain beliefs. They wanted to
right.
rid out those old histories. And here we are, right? And they wanted to have that trade route to Asia. There's always, always, always since the beginning of goddamn time been the trade routes to Asia.
Right.
Fucking, it's documented. And look at the Panama Canal. Why is that a big fucking issue? Why is Greenland an issue? That's going to be shipping over the top because when that sea opens up, but not only that, it's going to be the minerals up over the top, right? What can we mine for? What can we take? What's coming out under those ice caps, right? Same thing with Antarctica. You have all the disbeliefs of it, but really it's the minerals of what's down there. Um, I mean that's a whole different
There-
subject. I mean,
There's resource.
me
It's
and you
all
could be going on that
resource.
for a while, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the St. Regis Mohawk. I do know. a St. Regis Mohawk, and I'm going to try and get him on the podcast.
Oh,
So I got his email today. As I was doing this episode, I sent out requests. So we'll
oh,
send
good.
out an email. Hopefully, we get another good interview for you guys coming in this near future.
There
Uh,
you go.
but further ado, Matt, buddy, what fun facts do you have for us today?
Yeah, so this one I found was interesting. So the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation is situated next to a Superfund site highly contaminated with toxic chemicals.
Oh,
Because of this, the tribe has one of the most advanced environmental divisions of any tribe in the United States.
interesting.
And this brings up a whole thing we could get into on a whole nother podcast, but you think about there are a lot of tribes near either industrial or the fallout of uranium with the Navajo.
Even on the lands, with Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, right? Wasn't there some uranium dumping on, was it Navajo land that they
Yeah,
were like dumping it,
yep,
and the people didn't want it, but council was like, "Hey, we're getting money," right? Like there's
yep.
pros and cons, hey, we can fund these services or
Well, and what bring this brought to mind was the Navajo recently with the trucks coming,
yes,
like, banning those trucks coming through their reservation, which is a big deal, and the size of it.
we
Those,
really need those chairmen and those people to push that sovereignty, to really access that sovereign right of like, no, we can put up a wall and charge you a toll. What does that look like? Like we need to get off the teat, as they say. Well, think about it, right? Like there's so many services that are funded by the government, and you talk to any council member or any chairman, they're going to say, well, we don't want to lose that funding for our clinic, or oh, we don't want to lose that funding for these opportunities that we have because we're so reliant on the United States government, right? When in turn we could try and create some of that independence of our own with our own sovereign rights. I mean, there's
yeah.
agreements too, like if, hey, you're gonna put Highway 2 through the reservation, we're going to plow it for you guys, we're gonna
Well, there's so
state's
many
gonna take care of
forms. There's so many forms of the sovereignty you speak of, whether it's economic or with food, growing your own food, or you know, just so many areas that trade. I mean, we
it. Oh,
figure.
exactly. Did you know there's a new native apparel company?
No, I did not.
It's called Shop LS 574, named after the 574 federal tribes and the Little Shell descendancy of its founders.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
It is. It is becoming a spot to order native apparel by and for natives, working with native designers and teams to help best represent Indian country.
That's awesome, dude.
For sure. Now make sure to go pick up some native podcast swag as well as other native gear while shopping at shopls574.com.
Oh yeah, and do not forget to use code ANP10 to save on your next order.
That's ANP10. Hey Matt, did you know there's a tribally owned net company?
No, I did not.
Not only are they tribally owned, but Blue Ribbon Nets also creates totally sustainable products. With Blue Ribbon Nets, not only are you getting quality nets, but even eco-friendly ones as well.
That's awesome, dude.
It sure is indeed. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 on your next Blue Ribbon Net order to save. Again, the code is RUGAROO10, RUGARU10.
I am definitely getting a blue ribbon net now.
Tune in every Tuesday to hear your favorite native podcast.
That's right. A Native Podcast has new episodes every week, ranging from boarding schools to Indian child welfare.
Not only that, but we have Indian country covered from Maine to California and Florida to Alaska, Hopi to Blackfeet and Choctaw to Tlingit, and all those Crees in between.
And all you other natives and non-natives out there, we want to remind you to tune in this Tuesday to A Native Podcast. The first thing you really got to get into with these tribes is you got to go to their websites, right? Got to start, and all these tribes have websites set up. St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, srmt-nsn.gov.
We're going to get right into it. The history of the tribal government. I apologize. I've been sick too. That's another thing about the holidays. I feel like I always get sick.
I hear it in you a little bit in your nose there a little bit.
No, it is. I'm feeling it right now, but we'll be fine. The Mohawk are traditionally the keepers of the eastern door of the Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Six Nations Confederacy or the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Our original homeland is the northeastern region of New York State, extending into southern Canada and Vermont. Prior to contact with Europeans, the Mohawk settlements populated the Mohawk Valley of New York State. Through the centuries, Mohawk influence extended far beyond their territory and was felt by the Dutch, who settled on the Hudson River and in Manhattan. The Mohawks' location as Iroquois nation closest to Albany and Montreal and fur trade there gave them considerable influence among other tribes. This location also contributed directly to a long and beautifully complicated history. In the 1750s, to relive crowding at the Kanawak and to move closer to the Iroquois homeland, the French Jesuits established a mission at the present site on the St. Regis River. The Mohawk people had continually used this site at the confluence of the St. Lawrence River Valley as a part of our fishing and hunting grounds prior to the building of the first church. Akwesasne, as is known today, translates roughly to land where the partridge drums. That has always been a prime location due to the confluence of several small rivers and the St. Lawrence River. The Catholic Church records date back to the late 1600s. Oral history states that church was built on traditional ceremonial grounds. The community became more populated as Mohawks left the Mohawk Valley under distressed conditions in the mid 1700s, and in 1759, a band of Abenaquis Abenakis sought refuge with the Mohawk people during the French and Indian War. With some remaining behind, their party returned to their own village. In addition, also as a result of the dislocation caused by the war, a number of refugees from the Osawachi Mission near present-day Ogdensburg, New York, settled at St. Regis. After this immigration, the culture at St. Regis stayed predominantly Mohawk. In 1796, the Seven Nations of Canada, which included Christian Mohawks living in St. Regis, asserted rights to their lands and were eventually confined to a small parcel of land through a treaty signed by representatives of the Seven Nations of Canada and the state of New York. Today, the Mohawk people of Akwesasne still rightfully claim territory outside the confines of the current boundaries of the reservation and exercise guardianship over these lands through Natural Historical Preservation Act, Section 106, and Environmental Protection Act processes. In 1802, the St. Regis Mohawks selected trustees and a clerk at a community meeting held on the reservation. The New York State legislature passed a law recognizing three trustees and a clerk as the Mohawk people's chosen representatives. The trustees' primary purpose was to give a voice to the St. Regis Mohawks who lived on the American side of the Mohawk territory. Thus, in New York, and to oversee certain aspects of the relationship with non-native governments, it is not believed that the trustees initially usurped the role of life of chiefs, who were chosen in a more traditional manner and held their positions for life, who continued to control the internal affairs of the tribe. However, two of the original trustees were also life chiefs. By 1818, two of the original trustees had passed away and two new trustees were chosen, both whom were also life chiefs. This unique mixture of tradition and adaptability, coupled with strong non-native influences, brought about a new form of government. The present St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Council has emerged from those changes. In 1888, at a ground council of the Six Nation Iroquois Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mohawk Nation formally rekindled their fire and responsibilities to the Confederacy as a successor of the descendants of the Mohawks, who had left the Mohawk Valley 100 years earlier. The Mohawk people who had maintained their traditional customs and ceremonies restored their place as an elder brother of the Haudenosaunee. The Confederacy felt that it was beneficial to remain united, therefore strengthening its position when fighting for Indian rights under treaties previously negotiated with the United States. After the American War of Independence, the Mohawk people found it necessary to deal with the government of the state of New York. In order to protect themselves and the best interests, the Mohawks decided to select representatives to interact with New York. In the 1930s, the federal government proposed the Indian Reorganization Act, IRA. Each tribe was given the opportunity to reject the IRA, and the St. Regis Mohawks did reject the act in 1935. In 1953, a federal task force arrived at St. Regis to prepare termination legislation, but the chiefs and St. Regis people rejected the termination. Despite this, the Bureau of Indian Affairs proposed bill was presented to Congress, where it died in a committee without serious consideration. Administration termination of the tribes continued through the 1950s and mid 1960s. However, federal government was reminded that there had been no official termination of the federal relationship with the New York State Iroquois. The acknowledgement of federal relationship was also slow to manifest itself. Following preliminary findings, the leaders of the Iroquois tribes, including those of St. Regis, were invited to Washington to explore the establishment of a viable relationship. Through the 19th century, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Council government evolved to a point where the trustees were called tribal chiefs. Formalized elections are now scheduled each year, and definite terms of office are established. The tribal council is comprised of three chiefs, three sub-chiefs, a tribal clerk. The St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Council chiefs are responsible for setting policy and making major decisions on behalf of the tribe. They oversee the operation of St. Regis Mohawk tribal government and assure the quality of programs and services are made available to the Mohawk people. The tribal clerk maintains the official record of the council. New York State and the United States federal government deal with the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Council on a government-to-government level. The tribal council has received federal and state funds for a variety of tribal administered programs since 1973, all of which primarily employ Mohawk people. Today, the St. Regis Mohawk tribe administers its own environmental, social, policing, economic, health, and education programs, policies, laws, and regulations. So yeah, they're independent.
Yeah, well, and like you were saying, it sounds like they've sort of blended traditional government with some aspects of modern, which I find interesting.
But arguably, modern government, modern democracy comes from the Iroquois Confederacy. This establishment of having representation for the masses, for the numbers, right? We're going to send this person from this family, this clan to represent us at these larger things, right?
Right. Right. And it makes sense that they have like a governing board that represents all the Mohawk.
Right.
And then like there's the, just the St. Regis Tribe Council. And then but there's a bigger council like for the, the group as a whole, Canada side and everyone.
Well, that's the more traditional stuff when you think about it, right?
Right. Right. I was gonna mention as well that was a great summary and basically summarize my bullet points here. But they as I'll pull up the maps here, their traditional territory, it was southern Canada, northeastern New York, as you said, and then it even extended out into Vermont, according to their website at one time.
Oh, wow.
So it did go out east a little bit further, and of course, like all native people, the land gets shrunken down over
Right.
time. And then I wanted to say they have 15,000 enrolled members, which I didn't realize they were that big, to be
That's
honest.
a big number. That is a big number when
Yeah,
you look at these tribes, with tribal numbers,
for an Eastern tribe, that means they're one of the biggest then.
it kind of helps where they're located because like people think of the East Coast, right? They
Right.
forget like this part of New York is more remote.
Yep. I've heard it's beautiful. I've never been.
Oh, it looks beautiful by the pictures doing the research. Go ahead and pull up your map.
Yeah, so let me find, no, that's the website, the governing body. We don't need that. Oh, hold on, I have two. Okay, so I have two maps, so I'll pull up the first one here to show kind of the broader area. You see this?
Oh, yep.
Yep. So here, and I wish I could pull this even more. Here you can kind of see, so the Mohawk's the easternmost and the it looks like one of the larger territories.
Right. On the
Um,
on the far right, which you have uh
let me
there
see.
Vermont there, even Massachusetts, arguably, that kind of that corner there, but it's that eastern side of New York.
Right. And then I guess Vermont is right there. I was thinking it was over further. But yeah, as you can see, it goes over the St. Lawrence River, which drains out of Lake Ontario, over to the Vermont border. Kind of, yeah, that whole northeast kind of
But
corner.
see, this is 1730 supposedly, right? There was a lot of European contact by this time, especially in this area. People don't really understand, come the 1600s, what was going on in
Right.
America, right? They think 1776, right? Starting of the US. No, that's when those colonies were all, remember, those were colonies.
Right.
Like this is when they're getting established and set up. So people are coming over from Europe daily.
Mhm. Yeah, and you see the dotted lines and the state borders, and then over, you have the Oneida just west of them, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, Seneca, and the Tuscarora, and this little circle here. So those
Right.
are six of the Iroquois Confederacy. Um, and yeah, I mean the Mohawk, there, people hear of the St. Regis Mohawk, and they're a very active tribe. They're very they're in a lot of areas, economic, obviously, the toxic, the environmental
Yeah.
department with them is one of the largest with tribes. So
Yeah. Well, looking here, they also have the Tethawatahani Corporation owns the tribe's limited liability corporations, the LLC. These are this is their enterprises, right? The
right.
Akwesasne Mohawk Casino Resort is one of the largest employers, not only the local community, but the of northern New York as a whole. Revenue from Mohawk Gaming Enterprises LLC continues to serve as a critical funding source for tribal programs and services. Mohawk Networks LLC launched in 2015 after the tribe's completion of a 15 million broadband project that laid 68 miles of fiber and connected hundreds of Akwesasne residents to reliable, cost-effective broadband services. In 2016, Mohawk Networks developed an off-territory subsidiary company that is activating customers in rural, unserved counties, utilizing fiber to wireless technology, a less expensive development that leverages existing E911 towers. Mohawk Networks is creating a model that will deliver high-speed internet to our surrounding communities, increasing access to education, healthcare, and strengthening our regional economy.
Wow,
They have the casino and then this Mohawk Networks. That's what's listed as their enterprises,
that's
along
awesome.
with what you're talking about. The different opportunities that they have. That might be more of a program than a what I'm saying. Like
Right, right. And then, I mean, you looking at this map too, and it mentions here that the six Iroquois Confederacy nations, that's the majority of the state of New York.
right.
There
Well, like,
in
you can
six.
click on that Mohawk today, huh? Does that change the map if you click on that?
Oh, here you go. So
Yeah.
here,
Oh, look how much
here,
that's shrunk.
yeah, yeah, and here it zooms in on just right there, right along the border on both sides.
But see, I, yeah, that's where they're way at
Okay.
there. Go back to the Mohawk today. But you look at up where they're at, right? The three issues that they come up, right, is not only are they dealing with both Canada and the US, right? They're dealing with the state of New York,
Yeah,
they're dealing with Quebec,
yeah,
and they're dealing with Ontario,
yep.
right? And one of those uh issues that comes up with that, and I'm going to show you a map real quick on my
Yeah,
side. So if you
yeah,
can,
go for it.
um, you see that? So here's
I
kind of what
I
we're
have
talking
to stop
about.
share. Here, hold on. Let me stop mine. I have one more too, unless you
Yeah,
want.
no, that's fine.
Oh, okay. There
You
you
see
go.
mine? Yeah.
Yep.
So right here, right, red is the US, orange is Canada, but not only do you have the St. Lawrence River there, like you're talking about all these other rivers coming in, but you have Quebec and Ontario, with Cornwall being a large town right there in Ontario, border town. Um, then you have, yeah, the St. Regis, which is kind of there in the red. You can kind of see the roads and stuff.
Right.
Um,
Well, then
so,
you're dealing with whatever counties and cities are on both sides as well, which is another, because there's a town, my map show there's a town here just off the reservation too.
oh
And
yeah.
this is a jurisdictional nightmare for a tribe where they're located.
One issue that comes up is the smuggling, right? And part of the issue, because you're right there on the border, you're a sovereign nation. It creates kind of a gray area, as you say, to to do things. And it's not to do crime, right? I think that's what is advertised and what people see and how it's publicized. Because a lot of people, it's a way to fucking support their families because there is no other way because of where they're at. And you hear stories of kids selling cigarettes, buying it in Canada, bringing it across the US, and they're just going over this river that freezes in the winter on snowmobiles or whatever it may be, right? So you hear those stories. In 2006, New York Times did an issue. Drug traffickers find haven in shadows of Indian country. Uh, and then there's also a good video here that I'm going to play for you on the same issue, which I think really it's coming from the people there, and they kind of talk about it. It's more on the Canadian side, but it's the same thing here in the US. They talk about the issues because I mean, they really talk like the same. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
it's similar. So we'll get right into that.
To be that desperate to step into a boat during a storm is just almost incomprehensible.
People are going to cross, and they're going to take those women and those children and those men. They're going to bring them across, and there's going to be more tragedies here.
It's just the way of life. It isn't really, you don't think of it as illegal here. It's just another way to make money, to make a living. That's the way I look at it.
I think we have to deal with this. We have to come up with some solution for it.
Boarding a boat to retrace the path of an ill-fated journey across the cold waters of the St. Lawrence, guided by an Akwesasne man who once smuggled contraband across the river. His name is Darren George. We've agreed not to show his face because of the stigma associated with smuggling. He knows how quickly the river can turn deadly.
So they probably came through there, went down there, and they had to flip in here someplace if they were screaming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where they would have...
Oh, yeah. You see how much water is going to hit them?
Yeah.
There's no island to block them. There's nothing there, right? So something happened. Maybe the water came over the back of the boat, the big waves.
He says the 8 recent deaths in these waters should never have happened.
The wind's just pushing them around, right? You're not going to live in this more than 15, 20 minutes. But at night like that, you're not going to have police out here either. Yeah. So that's why you do push it.
2 families, 1 Indian, 1 Romanian, with 2 Canadian children, pushed out into these waters from Cornwall Island in the late evening of March 29th, hoping to slip into the U.S. through smuggling routes developed over generations by the people of Akwesasne. They never made it. Their small boat capsized. Casey Oakes, the Akwesasne man connected to the human smuggling attempt, is missing. And the river still hides much of what happened that March night.
This river has a lot of secrets, eh?
Too many. A lot of them you don't want to know. Yeah, crazy. But it's a way of life. Like I said, it's not always just being smuggling. We beaver hunt, we muskrat hunt, everything out here, fish. So it does everything. It's a way of life.
Darren's brother is Doug George Ganandio. He lives a very different life as a journalist and cultural consultant.
There's no family that has been untouched by smuggling. My uncle used to smuggle alcohol for the Kennedy family in Boston. This was the main conduit for it, and that's a given part of our history. And it's not a good part of our history. It's an embarrassing part of our history.
History shaped by geography and colonial geopolitics making Akwesasne unique in North America.
The singular issue here that you'll see virtually everybody at Akwesasne talk about when it comes to smuggling is that this is a problem made by Britain and United States and then Canada.
Akwesasne is one territory cut in two by the imposed Canada-US border. A band council oversees its island district in Ontario and its Quebec Islands and mainland. The rest, in New York State, is administered by a separate tribal council.
So the smuggling, the illegal transportation of goods across that border started almost from the time that border was established and set in place after the War of 1812.
Smuggling corridors then form through cracks between jurisdictions.
And so the smugglers take advantage of that. You have people on that river with high-powered boats exploiting people's their desperation. And that's what we have to live with, and that creates a kind of really crazy tension on this community.
Darren George says greed adds to the danger of human smuggling.
So you're saying
So
that to save money, people are using people who shouldn't be doing it.
Shouldn't be doing it, exactly. Hell yeah. Yeah, yes. Taking advantage of somebody's on drugs or somebody's drunk or somebody this, somebody that, yeah.
And that's
happening.
happening.
That happens a lot, all the time. Why should I give you $1,000? I can get it him for $200, and he'll do it.
Yeah.
We need him. Maybe they said we need them across tonight. I don't care what the weather is. Here's $1,000, and he'll do it.
There's a whole list of young men who died on the river.
Marjorie Skitters is the editor of Indian Time, the local weekly newspaper. She says the community still carries scars from cross-river smuggling of cigarettes that pushed Akwesasne into the national spotlight in the 1990s.
So this is an old story in many ways.
It is. It's old and it's sad. It's part of Akwesasne. And now the job has become to move humans, to move people.
But Skitters says there is part of the community overlooked by the outside world.
We still practice our ceremonies. We still go to the longhouse. We still have our songs and our dances. We have that, and we hold it strong and close to us. And we do everything we can to make that flourish. That we are a vibrant Ganyanke Haga community here.
Traditions thrive here. Children learn their language and how their people taught the world about maple syrup. Family bonds run strong, but these human smuggling networks, often with ties to organized crime, bring fear and danger to the community.
There's a fear. If I were to say, I saw somebody coming off a boat a mile down the river and call it in, would they come after me? I think that's the fear. There's a fear, a personal safety fear. We know this is larger than ourselves, larger than Akwesasne.
Doug George Ganandio believes there is one solution that can stop smuggling on the river.
We want to be governed by one singular Mohawk Nation Council. And the solution is immediate and it's obvious. Empower the Mohawks to have the unilateral jurisdiction to control this type of activity. Right now we don't.
On the river, cross-water traffic is again resuming its clandestine movements as the nation's attention begins to recede and the shock of 8 deaths begin to fade.
What happened didn't deter anyone. It's still going on within the community of Akwesasne. And I think it's going on daily. And I think it continues to happen in broad daylight throughout the community.
And Jorge is back in Ottawa tonight. Tell us, what can law enforcement do about this?
Well, this is probably one of the most heavily policed regions north of the U.S.-Mexico border. You know, on the Canadian side, we have the RCMP, the Ontario Provincial Police, Quebec Provincial Police, Canada Border Services Agency. On the U.S. side, you have Homeland Security, U.S. Border Patrol, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, New York State Police, Drug Enforcement Administration. Add to that, you have the Akwesasne Mohawk Police patrolling the Canadian side of the community and the St. Regis Mohawk Police patrolling the U.S. side of the community. There is no shortage of law enforcement agencies bumping up into each other's jurisdictions and agendas. You know, we have internal Canadian government documents going back 30 years with law enforcement discussing these issues and not knowing what to do about them. So what about the idea from Doug George Ganandio about uniting Akwesasne under one Indigenous government to control the river? Well, as far as we know, no government on either side of the border has considered this option. Ian?
All right, Jorge, thank you.
What I really found interesting about that video, I don't know, what you thought when you watched it, but it is that cry, in my opinion, for that sovereignty that we were talking about earlier in the episode of it is a jurisdictional nightmare. People are going to take advantage of it. People are coming across the US border, right? Like there was a story, I'm gonna read for you. I think this is on Native News Online, um, where it was St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Police rescued detained 6 in failed smuggling attempt. And it was a group of like 19 to 21-year-old. All right, I'll read the story right here. This is June 6th, 2022, right? In late April, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Police, tipped by U.S. Border Patrol agents, rescued and detained 6 India, the country, Indian nationals in a sinking boat as they attempted to illegally enter the United States from Canada. Their smuggler, a U.S. citizen, swam to shore and abandoned his passengers who are unable to swim without life jackets in water temperatures just above freezing. According to the complaint filed with the U.S. Department of the Northern District of New York, we were going to die, but the police saved us, one of the people aboard the boat told a Border Patrol agent. The rescue and capture of 6 citizens of India began when the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Service in Quebec reported their relatives at the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Police Department, New York, of suspicious activity. A boat holding multiple people traveling from Cornwall, Ontario towards the United States border. So there's just an example right there. 19 to 21-year-old Indian folk. They're getting smuggled into this country. And you see people are coming in many ways. They talk about the southern border being an issue, but they don't think of the northern border. And this is one of those things. They're doing alcohol, but it's for money. You tell somebody, here, I'm going to give you $10,000 to take me across a river.
Right.
You have a boat. You don't have $10,000. Fuck it. You know what I mean? You're going to put food on your family's table at night. Like that's how some of these people are thinking and going into these situations. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and I want to say there was a movie made about this.
So
It was like called Frozen. I don't think it was Frozen. It was something like that. And that
different.
woman,
That's you're thinking of Frozen.
well, it's not that exact. It has an ice associated name to it.
I know.
But there's a movie about this exact topic out there, older movie. But
Yeah, but it's interesting. It makes you think about it, and that's why I wanted to show the video, because it's coming kind of from that perspective, from the community of
right. Well, it brings to light, imagine if the tribes had more sovereignty and more police to enforce things, and more of a like, hey, this is our sovereign territory. The US doesn't have to get involved.
I agree with you in the sense that if you have one body of jurisdiction over an area and it is funded properly, yes. Because like you take some of these tribal police services, they're very underfunded.
Right.
So they don't necessarily can serve their full area to the T. That's where you get the sheriff and all these other organizations involved, right? But when you look at this area, it is considered one of the most policed areas north of the US-Mexico border.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
There is a lot of police presence there. because of all the jurisdictions, like you're saying
I
too.
see.
But I think it comes down to funding, in my opinion.
Right. No, that's a very unique issue to this community, to this, to the Mohawk people. And it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see, going forward to kind of how they're addressing it.
Well, and it's interesting, and I think we'll get into that one of the days when we talk treaties, et cetera. We talk about this area and how the land was actually set up. But I would like to get into how, they supposedly had 7,000 acres of land. That was their land, and their
Oh,
reservation is
wow.
only a few square miles now. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a
Right.
small portion of what that was. So I'm curious to see you know, what happened there,
Right.
how
Right.
that land grab really came about.
And we'd like to take the time to now pause and take you to music on A Native Podcast. This is where we feature Native American musicians and artists and their songs. This week, Water Song by the Akwesasne Women Singers. And that was Water Song by the Akwesasne Women Singers. Now, back to the podcast.
I had an article here, and I'll just share really quick. I won't read the whole thing, but um, this is how strong their environmental department is. They regularly test the river
Oh, wow.
for toxins. So this was a while back here, 2019, but their advisory matches the state advisory matched the Mohawk warning. And the tribal warning is to not consume fish during this time because it said here that they had elevated levels of BCPs, polychlorinated biphenyls, as well as mercury in the river.
Wow.
So the state health department recognized the Mohawks' effort to protect community health by issuing the fish consumption advisory. And obviously fish is an important food for them living on the river. So I just thought it was interesting. It shows the strength of their environmental health department.
No, that was interesting because, like you say, like, people think of us as these savages or these people in history, but in reality, we are freaking we're modern day people.
Right.
We're Zoom right now. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I like hearing about stuff like this because it's about like protecting the community's health, but also using modern testing and like, hey, like our rivers are polluted unlike 300 years ago, you know. So
American people have always been very hygienic. We took baths, we cleaned ourselves way before the European did. We knew about disease and we took care of it in different ways. There's a lot of medicine that stems from native things.
right.
Kind of to wrap us up real quick before we get into final words, I have some FAQ kind of questions that might win you a trivia night if you ever have a Mohawk question on trivia. What is the Mohawk tribe known for? They are known for their advanced weapons and their alliance with the British during the American Revolutionary War. So they were against America becoming a country and wanting independence. Because Britain didn't, part of, people forget, part of why is because Britain wanted to leave the colonies as is, whereas the Americans wanted to take more land, which didn't belong to them. So that's also why they fought for some of that independence, but they talk about the tea and the taxation more so
Mhm.
to get you off the real fucking issues. How did the Mohawk tribe get their name? The Mohawk tribe got their name from European explorers calling the Native American tribes along the eastern coast Mohawks due to their hairstyle. The Mohawks call themselves people of the Flint, which I believe is the Akwesasne name. Where did the Mohawk tribe live? New York. Before the Revolutionary War, after the Revolutionary War, the tribe split and some moved into Canada while others moved to Ohio. And that's kind of, I think, why you have them north there.
Right.
And that's just a FAQ kind of study lesson. Maybe you hear that on a trivia night. We win you some trivia. But other than that, Matt, that's kind of all I have.
Yeah.
Final words.
Yeah. My final bullet point happening was recent news with them. They actually reacquired some land recently. So
Oh,
3,500 acres were returned to the tribe by the state of New York. And they have the opportunity for up to 14,000 acres in land claim areas.
oh,
So
wow.
this was a recent acquisition by the tribe in the past few months, this fall. And it's good to see. It's part of that bigger movement of, like you were talking about earlier, the land back, you know.
Yeah, no, I
So
mean,
really good for them.
you talk about 7,000 square miles, give us some of those acres back, and talk about these guys. They like, and that's the thing is this ownership of land. You don't own the land. You're just paying taxes on it. If you don't fucking pay your taxes, somebody's gonna come kick you out of your house. You know what I mean? Like in reality, like we don't own the land we live on, and it's going to be here longer than us. You know, it's
Right.
it's one of those concepts to me that it kind of just like it blows my mind the difference, when you look at like the European mindset and compare it to a native mindset, and it's just like that. They see the resource of the land, not the coexistence with the land.
Right.
And then there's a difference there because yes, we're getting our homes from the wood, but we're not filling lumber yards with it. We're building it as we need it. We're living multi-generational in homes, there's more of a larger family structure, where it really takes a village, that saying, it takes a village to raise that, because it does, and it will. You get good quality folk. But that's kind of all I have. Until next time. Bye-bye.
I know ballers, I know chiefs, I know riders from the east. I know educated natives down to picket in the streets. Middle fingers to police, fuck you, we come in peace. I know red-skinned hippies that be giving me the creeps. I know beauty, I know beast, I know savages and freaks. And I know a couple cousins even bougier than me. No, ain't elite, bougie native, yes indeed. Art exhibit to the club, and we roll it 20 deep. Copper on my neck, gold on my ring, feather on my hat, skin stitched chin, 100 warriors on my back. They be drumming when I sing, man, there ain't no way around it.
A Native Podcast is produced by G&G Advertising and Quartz Lake Productions.